Oh, it says preparing to live stream the meeting. That's good. And I need to see us being online, so that's all good.
Oh, we're online, so
small delay in there, but that's perfectly fine. People will catch up. All right. Welcome everyone to our 5th NATO 2030 series taking place today. Together we have two of our patrons with us, Liliane Philip and Zdenek Roth, who will introduce themselves properly afterwards. I'll try to do both for both of you, but no guarantees. I also have to admit that I'm slightly experimenting with the whole online, and we've mentioned in the sort of pre-chat. I've been mocking Igor quite a bit on his inability to do this proper, but now that I have to do it, I have to admit, oh, this is more difficult than I thought it would be. But that's all fine. So today's topic for the 5th 2030 series is Afghanistan, and we've recently decision to finally, if you will, withdraw from Afghanistan, which has been a decision that has been hanging above our heads for almost 1.5 years now, since that Trump announced it with his unilateral peace deal. And now the Biden administration has followed suit with a very symbolic date, the 11th of September 2021, so exactly 20 years later. With us, we have two, I think, very wonderful young professionals who also recently wrote an article each for our magazine Atlantica. So we have Zdenek Roth, who wrote a beautiful article on the PRTs, which were provincial reconstruction teams, we say, which were a thing back in the ISIF days. He's a master graduate from the University of West Bohemia in Pilsen, and currently a PhD candidate at the same university. I think you're currently based in Prague, if I'm correct.
Yeah, Prague is basically Prague, so yeah, exactly.
So welcome from Prague. And then we have Liliane Philip from the Political Research Group. You're both the founder and the chairman of it, which is an NGO focusing on international projects in scientific research. And you're currently based in Romania.
yes, in Bucharest, Romania. Hello from there.
Wonderful. And for those who don't know, like who's this guy talking anyway? My name is John Jacobs. I should have introduced myself first. Founder and co-director of the Atlantic Forum. But I won't be saying many things today. I'm just here to moderate, to make sure that all of your questions will get to our two panelists. So if you have any questions, either if you're in the Zoom as a patron, please post them in the Zoom question box. Otherwise, just through Facebook, make your comment on the video. Without further ado, if both the panelists could introduce them slightly better than I've just done. And then Liliane, if you could go first. So a bit about yourself, and then take it away right away in your introductions on Afghanistan.
Yes, thank you a lot. It is an opportunity for me because I'm writing my PhD thesis on conflict resolution and the forms of international intervention after 9/11. So I will not go in the theoretical field, but I will insert some of these ideas. It is nice to talk about such a topic immediately after this announcement was made, and shortly before the NATO summit, because I think this subject will be included in further discussions. And my ideas for this conversation are focused on what NATO can provide for Afghanistan in the near future, and also how the international community can be more involved, because I think NATO will not be able to manage all this situation in the region, and with ISIS rising or finding this opportunity to speculate in Afghanistan. So first of all, I will speak also from my professional experience. I think NATO can contribute through education and training programs. Recently, the NATO Secretary General announced that will be a new chapter in the approach for Afghanistan, and NATO will provide education and training, especially for special forces, and also some financial aid. This is something important because the Secretary General comes with a declaration um, before the NATO summit. And as I am NATO expert in quality assurance management and military education, I have participated in a lot of mobile teams for education and training in NATO partner countries. And I think this is a very important instrument because it comes with a sustainable stabilization process for such countries and provides structural changes. So not something for the moment, but for the future. This is not the case now because we want to have real and very soon results. But I think here we must analyze the current situation in international politics, which is a little bit different, and the rate of changes are alert. So we can see that China, which is seen as a very important actor now, has a very interesting economic interest in Afghanistan. Is the only country that builds roads and extract ores from the Afghan soil. So China can have the interest to stable the Afghanistan, to have a stable Afghanistan in order to pursue his economic interest. So Iran, which is was a supporter of the conflict and financed the Taliban, now is maybe not so interested in sustaining a hot conflict there because of the inflammation of Israel and Hamas. So maybe for the moment, for the short moment, they will not be such involved in this conflict, but I don't think in the future will be the same. We also have Taliban, which the main objectives are to regain the power and to impose Sharia law. So this is the main objective. They will not drop it. We have ISIS, which collaborates with Taliban, and I think a week ago they attack Kabul. I don't know. I don't have all the information, but they are present there. So in this context, we can conclude that the prospect for a civil war is high, and I think that NATO cannot be the actor that can manage this situation by himself. So and because there will be a civil war there, it maybe be the case of the new international intervention. But this new international intervention should be led by international community, maybe UN mission there. And as I can see and as I can analyze comparing with other conflicts, we can have a NATO mandate to implement UN Security Council resolution there. maybe invoking responsibility to protect and pursue the human rights and defending the Afghan people there. So to sum up, I think NATO must be involved to keep the connection with the partners there. And on the other hand, the international community must be more involved in what it comes. And of course, the main objective and the most important objective in Afghanistan is to go to peace agreement between Taliban and the Afghan people. And if we will continue with the logic of the proxy war in Afghanistan, I think we will talk about Afghanistan and the conflict there like forever. So the international community must come to an agreement about what be the evolution in Afghanistan.
Right, and then excellent, also answering one of our first question, but we'll delve into that a bit more later. The first one switched over to Zdenek. Floor is yours. Please also introduce yourself a bit more than what I just did in the early remarks.
Also, thank you for the short introduction in the beginning. So I'm Zdenek Grot. I'm the fellow at the Center for Security Analysis and Prevention in Prague, and simultaneously, I also pursued a PhD degree at the West Bohemian University in Pilsen, Czech Republic as well. And basically, I structured a couple of points according to today's topic, which is primarily NATO's role in the future settlements. And we've already discussed that there's going to be some new chapter. However, how this new chapter of the mutual relations between NATO and Afghanistan and vice versa, how it's going to look, it still remains unclear. We will see more in summer and after September. Of course, there are obvious risks to the Kabul's government, to the continuation of the Kabul's government, because still the peace settlements haven't been reached between Taliban and the other side by Ghani's government. And what should be the role of NATO? Definitely, NATO should stand for the Kabul's government and should basically stand as a diplomatic ally as well as moderator between Taliban and NATO. Mediator, basically, to manage the mutual relations. Why I'm saying manage, because probably we cannot resolve the mutual distrust between Taliban and the official government based in Kabul. Reconciliation cannot resolve that. However, we can foster the management of the mutual relations. They don't have to be the best friends. However, they are able to structurally and, let's say, rationally combine mutual approaches and development. They are able to cooperate on a certain level. Furthermore, further instability is, of course, a huge risk, not only for Afghanistan, but also for the neighboring countries, but potentially for the West, because there is a huge risk of migration, especially meaning migrants, especially people who do not wish to live under the Taliban regime. So this is in the first place. Then, of course, you got the economic migrants here. Secondly, on the other side, I believe that some potential peaceful settlements will be reached because both parties, Kabul and Taliban, they are tired of the protracted and prolonged conflict. Also, I assume that Taliban no longer doesn't want to be seen as some guerrilla group. They want to be seen as a legitimate political actor that can negotiate with the international players. And also, the future, I would say that Taliban, this is the only way. They want to be seen as the legitimate actor in the political system to pursue the future settlements. And furthermore, definitely at this moment for Kabul's government, might also have been tricky to control the cities with the NATO help, because NATO basically serves as the main crucial pillar for for the official security forces. But in that case, NATO at least could help with some aid. In the first place, it can be the military foreign aid. If you use the analogy with Vietnam, basically what happened in Vietnam, when the US Congress cut the military aid, the South Vietnamese army fell apart within 2 years. So definitely the continuation of some military aid should continue. Then Liliana mentioned some trainings. Trainings are extremely important, especially trainings for the specific parts of the Afghan security forces, such as for example, Air Force personnel and others. However, I assume that these trainings should be carried out outside of Afghanistan, not to let's say, not to stalemate or not to basically diminish the ongoing process, because Taliban doesn't want to wish to have the international actors in Afghanistan. Third, also why NATO's role as a mediator is important is that if the current settlements, let's say, if they had collapsed, it would have also impacted and jeopardized the past 2 decades. And what happened? It would have impacted health, education, and now, basically, most importantly, women's rights. If we also take a look at some more, we can say, hardliners approaches within NATO, for example, Jamie Shia or others also assume that as the worst case scenario could be the usage of so-called concept called horizon deterrence. That means that if NATO wanted to sustain the Kabul's government, they could use some, let's say, limited airstrikes, drone operation, or sabotage, like Israel is doing. But I assume that this is the last thing they want to do, because again, it would just basically diminish again. It would just escalate the conflict. However, within the NATO community, we can also hear those voices. And fourth, if we look out of Afghanistan, I think NATO experts and academics should draw some lessons learned. Analyze what has happened in the past 20 years. What are the lessons learned? What were the mistakes? What were the advantages? What worked well, what didn't? Because you've got other ongoing conflicts, especially in the Sahel, in Mali. So some lessons learned definitely could be used. Lessons learned concerning development, concerning counterterrorism, and maybe concerning reconstruction of the government. Because also there are strong voices that probably promoting basically the Western type of settlements and governments doesn't have to be necessarily good in the first phases of their construction. I believe in those values. I'm just saying that should be used maybe in the third or fourth phase, not at the beginning, which the majority of the post-conflict construction are also saying. So fourth, and lastly, the fifth point we got here, NATO as well shouldn't also be used as the only mediator in the region. NATO should basically deepen their ties with the neighboring countries, especially with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, because without those regional players, probably NATO would not be so successful as it can be. Then I don't know if I can continue with some couple of points, and I've got some points concerning basically the maintaining the security in the borders, and then Russia and China. So we just don't know if I should pass the floor. We come back to it later. John?
We'll definitely touch upon that, absolutely.
Okay, so I would stop here. I would stop here on the basic NATO.
I want to add something.
Sure, go ahead, Liana.
Rod said something about training and education not on the Afghan soil. That is happening because Romania, it is a point of contact for Afghanistan, and I think This month will be a training session with professor from Afghan Defense University. So it is happening, and I hope it will continue. They will come in Romania, so we'll not be in Afghanistan. We are safe. Yeah.
So to tie in with that, and also the title, if you will, of our conversation, which is Quo Vadis, which is just really fancy Latin for the question like, where are you going? I have to check the dates. So I think it was only 4 days ago, or maybe 5, that Secretary Stoltenberg actually made remarks about indeed where they're going. Indeed, one of the things that they're going to do is training outside of Afghanistan, with a focus on special forces operations. They've been talking about military education. They've been talking about financial support to the Afghan security forces. That's something you touched upon, Zdenek. Of course, we don't know amounts. That's the question: is it going to be enough, and how are they going to control it, or are we just sort of going to throw money at the problem and then hope that it goes away? But that there will be a post-withdrawal support that's now being proposed. Secretary General Stoltenberg at least has discussed it with President Macron ahead of the meeting indeed, and we're actually looking at June 14 to see what comes out of the NATO summit. So would you dare to try and give an estimation of what you think will come out of this summit? What will be the concrete things that NATO is now going to decide on? How it's going to look like? Is it comparable to anything that NATO has been doing in the past, either maybe in Libya or Iraq or who knows where? So what would you feel about that? Zdenek, first to you.
I think it is very important to see what is the United States reaction of this, because they don't come with any declaration after the withdrawal. So they will be part of NATO summit, and I hope they will facilitate to facilitate NATO to take the leadership for some of programs in dealing with securing Afghanistan. But as I said, I don't think, and the NATO had the capacity and the instrument, and is not made for that, to deal with conflicts, even if it had doctrine in project instability. Is not mature now. But I think there is a very important opportunity to start to build in this direction. And I don't know if the Europeans will be so touchy about what happens with Afghan peoples. They are now oriented in the eastern part of NATO, so no the southern. I think there will be more problem in the southern part than in the eastern one for now, in the future. But I expect the United States declaration and position to understand better what it comes.
Well, okay. Well, my position that way on that is, it basically goes in hand with the points I've already mentioned. I would say in the first place, accelerate this peaceful dialogue and the settlements, again, to bring Taliban and Kabul's government to the table to discuss the future after the withdrawal, after September 2021. Secondly, some potential aid. I'm not able if it's going to be on military aid or other type of financial aid going to the education sector, judicial sector, and so on. And third, I also assume that NATO will try to basically portray themselves as some basically long-term ally Afghan can rely on. Something I'm able to say, something in that way, let's say some strategic cooperation for the future, because definitely what I assume, NATO doesn't want to leave the country behind after 20 years of initiating peace building activities, something like that. Also, basically notice that they might try to basically incorporate Afghanistan into the economical or market structures, to postpone them more, which goes hand in hand with the renewal of the economy. And fourth, which NATO realizes or has been rising for a while, many of the initiatives must go hand in hand with the regional players. I would say NATO, especially the US, already realizes that they need to take into account what Pakistan thinks, Russia thinks, which Russia has been strongly involved, and we will discuss later, and generally CCO. So yeah, something like that. And fifth, again, that NATO will be supporting stability in Afghanistan, because NATO and the US, they've got allies in the Middle East, and no one wants instability in Afghanistan again. But yeah, these are just basic speculations. So we can agree probably on some aid, financial aid, and moderating the peace talks to find a common ground.
So I think on that one, you touched upon a very nice one with your last remark. I think, no, we're still there. I thought we had a disconnect there. Sorry about that. Right, now I lost my train of thought. Right, you mentioned the peace deal, which technically isn't a peace deal yet, but we did decide to do a withdrawal. So that's going to be a weird dynamic. Taliban obviously is aware that we're going to leave on September 11th. So there's no real incentive for them to move forward with the peace deal and actually commit to it. So looking at the actors on the ground, how do you feel then that that's going to play in? And especially looking at indeed the increased attacks, and Liana, you mentioned that I think it was earlier this month, the attack in Kabul on a school. Taliban to the right wasn't us, okay, but it's definitely someone. So what's going on there? Is Taliban no longer able to control all the militias that previously were associated with it? Are there any other actors in the field that when NATO now leaves that will fill in the gap? Well, you mentioned IS, the IS wing, ISPK. So Zdenek, also looking at your expertise is related to terrorism. How do you feel that it's going to develop in the coming months leading up to the withdrawal, and then also afterwards?
Okay, so should I start or okay, so I will just touch upon the first thing when you also said the reconstruction of the government. We have to realize that the reconstruction of the government is one of the most difficult things within the war reconstruction. Especially in the Afghan case, when we got two actors, which are fundamentally different. You've got Taliban, which is who holds totally different ideological position than the Afghan government, and somehow they need to find a common ground for the brighter future. But Leana will discuss it further. Second, regarding the potential, well, no one wishes that Afghanistan would become a new heaven of terrorism. No one wants that. And basically, this chapter will follow on the regional happening. Also, the other actors will be countering terrorism in the region, because ISIS is especially active basically in Iraq or on the west, basically in the western part of Afghanistan. And so first, the regional dynamic, and second, Afghanistan and its security forces, they need aid to counter terrorism because it's extremely expensive only concerning technologies, to monitor them. I don't know what, some potential satellites, drones, and so on. So this is basically now from my side.
Sound very, very positive. Liana, dare to give a more positive view, or it's going to be a very bleak conversation like this?
No, I will add something, and I will start from a very clear image. Now it is a vacuum of power in Afghanistan, and everything could happen. Most of all, we must know that after the troops were gone from Afghanistan, is not about this withdrawal, because over time there were a lot of diminished of troops in Afghanistan. So after base was left without foreign troops, Taliban gradually conquered them. So they have huge control of the country. About terrorism, because you ask, and counterterrorism efforts, now there is no one capable in Afghanistan to carry out these counterterrorism efforts, because the national defense forces, Afghan national defense forces, are not enough and not well equipped. And I remember that United States before, or maybe in the day they made the announcement, said they will give support for aviation and to assist them in airstrike and so on, and that Afghan aviation is ready to take the responsibility. I don't think this is the case now. So because of these details, I don't know if terrorism will be contained in Afghanistan. I think they have a full open highway there. So as I said, I eagerly wait US position in this respect, and also the NATO summit decisions. And I hope the terrorism will be a very important point in the final declaration.
Also, sorry for interrupting, but basically in this case, what you have to touch upon, firstly, you can counter terrorism in the military way. Secondly, you can use development, because this is basically the security development nexus, because it's assumed that the frustration lies basically, or the radicalization lies in the economic frustration. Therefore, the aid is extremely important, because if basically people get more, let's say, more social, some more wealth, more social wealth, more welfare, probably they will not tend to get radicalized and to get recruited for those terrorist cells. Of course, that's kind of the prevailing theory on that. Second is that the radicalization lies in the ideological lines. So even though we basically inject a bunch of money, $1 million, what has also happened in the past 20 years, seems that still Taliban is still strong enough and has got a kind of considerable amount of supporters. So yes, two ways, either basically three ways: counterterrorism, helping military, we support the Afghan forces. Second, we support the development in Afghanistan to increase the economic wealth. And third, we cooperate with the regional players on countering terrorism, because terrorism hasn't got any clear lines. They are moving from one country to another. So it doesn't mean that when we solve ISIS in Iraq, or let's say we solve ISIS in Iraq, that it will not move. Look at that. ISIS has now emerged in East Africa, in Sahel. So yeah, let's get there 3-4 points on that.
Can I summarize it as saying that the effort that NATO's now proposing post withdrawal is nice, but it's not really gonna do anything? Staying in the bleak corner here. So if it were up to you, and then you would have any influence in 2 weeks' time to address North Atlantic Council, what do you feel that NATO should be doing? Liliana, if you want to Go with that
Yes,
first.
I will start. What NATO should be doing? NATO has, as I said, has this opportunity now to reinvent and to expand more. But we must not forget what is the mission, the main mission of this organization. It cannot be United Nations. That's for sure. NATO was in this international intervention in Afghanistan from beginning with the United States, and NATO and the United States are seen as an enemy. They will not be cannot facilitate or mediate peace negotiation there, because they were on the ground, they were enemy, they were fighting each other. So Taliban, I don't think they will want to talk with NATO, and NATO has not this objective. It is a political military organization. So for the diplomatic efforts, I think international community, I think Turkey can have a very important role, because I think shortly before the announcement to be made, there were some arrangement, diplomatic arrangement, to meet all together in Istanbul for peace negotiations. So I think Turkey can be in this equation. And I forget to tell you something about Russia. Russia supported the conflict, but I think only because they want to export the instability from Afghanistan in United States. So now they don't have the same interest, and they do not want to consume resources in that area anymore. And going back to what I think NATO can do, NATO has played a very important role in 20 years there. They had a very huge experience in a training, in assistance, in having this connection with all what means Afghan authorities. So this, I think, is the role, is a very important role given the context, to maintain the dialogue, to monitor what happens there, because it's very important to have intel and to know what interests are in the moment. And I expect for the United States to facilitate this situation, and to make NATO to have some roles of what the United States had in Afghanistan. And in it is all about the political will and what they will decide, because NATO is not only one voice. So I think the next month will be a very hard one, also because of Afghanistan.
Okay, so if I had a chance to decide whether to pursue the withdrawal or not, I then would pursue the withdrawal. I would basically I would pursue the withdrawal. Why do I say that? Firstly, Afghanistan experienced more than 100,000 NATO troops, and it didn't work. 150,000, it didn't work out. So it seems that the military solution is not on the place. Therefore, also basically NATO has decided with the US, of course, that the withdrawal might be the solution to the conflict, because the forces cannot stay there for forever. At this moment, after 20 years, NATO should take the role to be there, say, some mediator, the development agent in the region, supporting the government. But already these things should be resolved or better managed by, let's say, primarily Afghans themselves, even though it's going to be extremely difficult. Therefore, NATO should be there as the supportive element of those negotiations. Second, I think that the withdrawal would come but also very much soon, because the NATO countries need to basically pay their attention to other ongoing conflicts. France has been now stuck for a while in Mali and in Sahel generally, placing there a lot of money, a lot of soldiers, and also other NATO allies want to support France in this counterterrorism and Sahel initiatives. So soon still, I would say that they will be able to sustain having forces in Afghanistan and Sahel. And third, after 20 years, it's already kind of difficult to politically justify the position of Afghanistan, why we are here. So I also understand this could use decision why. So yeah, I would try that. Let's try the new chapter, which we are doing. But importantly, we cannot leave Afghanistan behind, because after 20 years, we cannot just say, okay, so we are leaving and now it's up to you guys. No, definitely there must be some additional help, but from outside, or some advisors or our European NGOs in the region. But the military presence, if the military presence is the stalemate in the negotiation, when Taliban refuses the NATO presence there, and if the NATO withdrawal should facilitate the peace talks, then I'm for the withdrawal. And we will see what will happen in autumn after withdrawal, if Taliban really starts to negotiate more or not. But so far, I have not read any article that would say it's going to be like that. So far, we are just speculating how it might be. You know, there are also internal frictions within Taliban. I believe so. Internal frictions between the Kabul's government. So it can also change from the internal side, not from the external influences. So if I could like sum it up in this in this way.
Now, if we look at the plans when it comes to Kabul specifically, so NATO is now talking about not completely abandoning it, right? They want to support at least the airport. Would you reckon that that could be so like leaving the door slightly open? Is there like an agenda behind that? And do you think then that it's reasonable that in years to come we'll have some sort of form of, at least with the international community, maybe not per se NATO? Liliane, you already mentioned possible UN, possibly coalition of the willing, like we've seen in Syria. What kind of follow-up are we expecting? Or are we really just leaving Afghanistan to its own devices?
So basically what you mean, if there should be some basically still some international support managing some part of Afghanistan. Well, if the both parties agree, why not? But at this moment, if you look at other post-conflict settlements, for example, in the Balkan, where Bosnia and Herzegovina is no longer very much happy about the High Commissioner managing the parts, managing the governmental decisions. This can also happen in Afghanistan. Therefore, again, it will just diminish, or it will just basically postpone potential reconstruction and potential future developments. So yes, both parties agrees, yes, but probably it's going to be for a limited time, maybe 4 or 5 years. Probably shouldn't be for indefinite period, as it happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we see that also the Bosniaks are kind of opposing the role of High Commissioner. Of course, this is a totally different issue. It's very multi-phase, very complicated, but we can see that if the international players stayed for long, then again it had kind of a negative impact on the reconstruction and on the development. So definitely for some limited period of time, but it should not basically oppose or hamper those peace talks.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Liliane, before switching back to you, since you already mentioned the UN, I think something that a lot of people that are not too busy with Afghanistan in their daily lives often forget there actually is a UN mission in Afghanistan that's always been there. The United Nations
It's very small.
in Afghanistan, and then I think it recently has been extended up to 17 September this year, so 6 days longer at least than the NATO commitment. Looking at also how other major actors will have a role to play. So in our introductions, we talked about Russia and China having a role. They are obviously also P5 members in the UN. How do you think that UNAMA will shape and form? How will that change?
I'm not referring to UNAMA to expand or something. I'm referring to a new one and a new mission there with another background, because the one that is now there, I know it is very small and it had not such good or better results, because was the other one was ISAF, and then Enduring Freedom and Operation Freedom Sentinel and Resolute Support. So it was enough to cover what it should mean the managing the situation there. So when I was referring the UN mission there, I was referring a new one, and I was referring as a best scenario for Afghanistan. This is my opinion, the best scenario for Afghanistan, because you mentioned also coalition of the willing. The coalition of the willing are for a very short period of time, because there are a lot of interests of national states which cannot be for longer term. They are for the moment, and then these interests are changing. So coalition of the willing is best to be used when it is international intervention, when we have, I don't know, escalation of civil war there. I think will be the case of an escalation of a civil war. Maybe not now, but after September, it is a scenario that we must take into account. And in that case, NATO can have a very important role, and to reinvent what can be for Afghanistan in the future. But as I said, United Nations is the best solution, in my opinion. Meanwhile, the international community and I don't know, our professors or think tankers will find the better solution in what means prolonged conflicts as we have in Africa, and we see United Nations is everywhere. So this is my best scenario for Afghanistan.
Well, in this case, I can kind of agree with Liliana that the UN can be viewed as the neutral actor in the country. Also, that depends what kind of nations the UN presence would involve. But it can be seen. Well, let's say the international community is going to try that, or not. Yeah, but definitely must go with accordance and go hand in hand also with the wishes of Kabul and maybe of the Taliban to find some common ground. Because basically, when we are watching, we've been watching the reconstructions over the years. We've seen that the international actors are complaining, that their ideas are not taken into account, which I'm also a bit worried, that the international community would like to resolve everything behind, but also they must include into those negotiations also the Afghan people themselves. Yeah, so that's just a comment to that.
Right, we still have about 10 minutes left, and we already touched upon the back actors. What are your expectations from their side? How will I think I can just sort of say that, right? I'm a bit skeptical about the intentions of Russia and China. Let's still put it nicely and diplomatic. How are they gonna use or abuse the situation? When if you look at how these countries are using the international system to destabilize, or basically stabilize system, looking at how they use information, how they use lawfare. So again, both a negative and a positive situation. So let's say a most dangerous situation, and then something that we hope that will be happening. What can you expect from these actors, and how should NATO and its allies react to that? Liliana, if you want to go first.
Yes, it is easy, I think, with that, because China, it is with his economic interest there. So he needs a stable Afghanistan. He wants to build roads, he wants to expand in that region and to do smoothly and to do in a quiet way, because this is the China style. So China will not encourage the conflict or the escalation of conflict, and I don't think will support Taliban, because in this moment the highest risk is are the Taliban, and if they will cooperate with ISIS. And on the other part, Russia, I think, is happy now because of the Nord Stream 2, and United States dropped the sanctions. So it is a little bit happy. I saw that President Putin had some tough declaration yesterday. But on the other side, Russia is very occupied with what happens in Arctic region. So I think for the moment it is not the proxy war and the competition between Russia and US in Afghanistan, and I think also they don't need to have such distraction all over the globe and to have a hot conflict in Afghanistan. I am a little bit optimistic in what to expect from Russia, because as we remember, Russia was a partner in the fight of terrorists. So I hope they will go also in this direction in this case, and to fight and to be a partner of this, what means global war on terror. There are not so much prospects in encouraging this conflict from these global powers, but the higher risk in this moment is the cooperation between Taliban and terrorist organizations.
For you to also think about if China is indeed interested in a stable Afghanistan. To me, it sounds like a bit overlap with what we've been trying to do, we as being the NATO community, European community, with the reconstruction teams, with the idea that if there's economic gain, then the Afghans themselves will try and seek to protect that. Would you indeed reckon that a Chinese approach to well, not a provincial reconstruction team, but then to the whole, at least the regions that are interesting to China? Or would you say that that's a lost game to start with?
I think we are comparing China with something that it is not the same. What is doing China there is not in the context of an international intervention. So the way that China operates in the world is highly different as the Western has done. So this is the essential point if we want to understand why China can succeed there. So in this moment, Afghans or Taliban has nothing with China. China is there to help to develop the country. Yes, so it is the good guy now.
Well,
right. So Danik?
Well, General, I've got a couple of facts. I would like to flood your discussion. First of all, interesting, people forget that basically we can say the West, China, and Russia, they all want to have a stable Afghanistan. However, how to do so, the process are completely different. Russia, China, they do not care what kind of government sits in Kabul unless it hits their own economical and strategic interests in the first place. If you look at China, China is a very interesting actor in Afghanistan. China has been active there for a while, especially in development activities, however, never supported the NATO military operations. Why they didn't so? Why they did not so? Firstly, they didn't want to antagonize Taliban because they were basically afraid that it could retaliate against the Chinese Muslim community. That can be the first explanation, kind of. So development activities. Second, they don't want to see unstable country on their borders. Every state wants to enhance its security. So logically, China doesn't want to have another fragile state on their border. Third, as I said, China doesn't care what kind of government there is unless it hits their interest. That means that in the future, not now, in the future, definitely, China will try to basically incorporate Afghanistan into the Belt and Road Initiative somehow, and or that's in the first place, or they will try to involve them into the so-called new evolving Chinese and Pakistan economic corridor. So it could connect basically China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Central Asia. So somehow in the future, we'll try to evolve that. However, I do not, if it's China is a good guy or bad guy, that I will leave at others. Definitely, there are some positive impacts on the development. But secondly, China seeks the economic opportunities. Primarily, must serve their economic opportunities, which we can see in the rest of the world, in Africa, and so on. So we still have to keep that in mind. Lastly, NATO's role on China and so on. Well, China will be cooperating definitely, I would say, with West or NATO on the security stability, because why? The mutual cooperation will reduce the costs for China. Because China should take over all Afghanistan measures. They will be pretty expensive. So I would say they will try to pursue some strategic approach, leave the security maybe on NATO or Afghanistan itself. And we will be basically developing our economic activities, not to be spending much on security. China. If we move on to Russia, Russia's position is very, I would say, highly contested in this case. Firstly, there are, I wouldn't say in speculation, all the evidences. So within the US administrative and within NATO, we could have experienced that within the Trump administrative, that Russia supported Taliban fighters in some way, some military aid, killed Talibans, or basically killed Talibans were found with the Russian military, with the Russian arms, which probably could not have been found in the black trade. But again, Russia doesn't want to have instability in Afghanistan, which could basically spill over to the southern, to the post-Soviet republics, especially Tajikistan, which Tajikistan has been fighting for a while with terrorism. So and Russia's got their own economic initiatives in the Central Asian region. So therefore, they don't want that some instability and terrorism will spill over there. Secondly, we can also see that how the Russian position, that's very interesting, how the Russian position has changed over the years. In 2001, of course, Russia didn't like the NATO intervention there, but still, Russia was kind of rather weak, we can say, at that time, still waking up after the end of 90s. We look what happened in 2014, when the first talks on the withdrawal started. Lavrov opposed. They said NATO should not leave Afghanistan unless it's completely secured. Something in that way in 2014. However, in 2019, Lavrov already said that NATO has to leave Afghanistan to facilitate the peace-building initiatives. So also the position has pretty much changed. Also, Russia doesn't care who's sitting in Kabul. Just it doesn't hit their interests. Also, I would say Russia is using their lessons learned from the 80s, that they should not stick to one particular side, either some ideological side. Russia will be shifting pragmatically and strategically from one actor to another. to find some common ground that could serve their interests. So definitely Russia will not stick just to Taliban or just to Kabul. There will be somewhere in between. And as John, basically you mentioned how you are not very, as you said, something like positive that Russia and China will strengthen their role. I think it's going to be something at the beginning. Probably Russia and China, they will try to fill the vacuum. Still no one knows how. Probably some economic interests, because Russia is using the kind of, I would say it's Russia selling the oil to the northern parts of Afghanistan. There is some also, so oil business. China's got their economic business. So yeah, it's going to be developing very slowly. And yeah, so that's from. But yeah, to sum it up, really all parties want to have a stable Afghanistan, just the views differ, how it should look like. And the Chinese-Russian approach doesn't go hand in hand with NATO and the US. So yeah, because NATO, we see development in the broader sense. We see judicial system, education, human rights, women's rights, and Russia and China, they are still the pragmatic, realistic players, homo economicus players. They won't need, they will be doing those initiatives that serves their interest. So sooner or later, if basically Afghanistan had was, for example, cooperating more closely with China, it can also end up within the depth of diplomacy, or something like that. So also the Afghani players, I hope that they will be also kind of pragmatic and strategic and rational when cooperating with China and Russia. So that's from my side.
Well, that at least makes me feel slightly more positive about the upcoming affairs. Only slightly, though. Seeing it's already our 5 o'clock mark, well, we do have a few questions from the audience. So if I can borrow your time for slightly longer, and we'll go slightly over time, if that's all right.
It's okay.
It's all right.
Right. So anyway, we talked about sort of the actors around it, bordering countries, near bordering countries. But there's one, and then I think it's a good remark that we've missed. That's Pakistan. So you have one question. How do you feel that the US policy towards Afghanistan is affecting or will affect the stability in Pakistan? So that there's going to be an equilibrium between both strategic interests, so the interest to get out of Afghanistan, but you also want to keep Pakistan stable. How is that going to play into the mix?
Very interesting question, and also because of the relation between Taliban and Pakistan and United States, and I think Pakistan now waits to see what to play to be in his advantages. And also coming back to the discussion about the terrorism in the region, will have a huge impact there. So I don't know to say what will be the evolution of this relation between Taliban and Pakistan and US and Pakistan, but this will be the most important the issue with Afghanistan, with Pakistan. I hope Pakistan will not encourage or support the Taliban and will be the part of the Western countries.
No, you're still
okay. So from my side, if you look at it strategically, Pakistan, I do not assume that Pakistan will do some decisions or some strong decision that wouldn't go hand in hand with Washington, the White House. If I'm not mistaken, and tell me that, I still assume that the US is the top foreign aid donor to Pakistan. It's definitely one of the top donors to Pakistan. So I do not think the Pakistani government wants to lose also the aid. So we will be very pragmatic. So those things will also go hand in hand. And secondly, well, again, looking from the structural perspective, Pakistan almost doesn't want to see unstable country on their borders. So if they will be cooperating with Taliban or Kabul, well, I don't know. There are some close ties, or there have been some ties with Taliban, but again, they don't want to have a fragile state on their side, and kind of they will try to support or foster the security in the region. But I'm a little bit, I also think I'm a little bit not, well, basically I assume that those decisions Pakistan could make must be set into the broader framework of their foreign policy.
All right. That sort of leaves us at the closing part. One thing I want them to do, so the question we raised, Quo Vadis, where are you going? Where are you marching to? I think the original one was. So to answer that one, and we'll do that very modern in a tweet. I don't know how many characters a tweet is these days. Keep it very short. So in one line from both of you, where are we going? Liliana.
NATO must remain involved in Afghanistan, and to expand what it is to be more successful in projecting stability in such regions.
Okay,
right,
so
your closing one.
On a positive on this side, definitely NATO's approaching brighter future, because NATO knows what the lessons learned are, and they will use them and they will implement that. Well, definitely, NATO has to basically has to include and has to basically critically rethink what happened in the past, what's been going on for a while, to avoid future mistakes. Concerning Afghanistan, Iraq, maybe what's going on in Sahel and so on. Probably NATO also is facing some things, whether NATO is going to be just a defense alliance or defense alliance with some broader basically, broader involvement somewhere else as the peace building initiatives, because there's missing, there's some missing framework for that. And yes, if we are not, if NATO will not rethink the past mistakes, probably the future cannot be brighter, as I said at the beginning. And there are new challenges. NATO has to react: hybrid wars, still ongoing terrorism, Russia in the East, Sahel, and Arctic. So this is the future where we are going, and I hope we will make it well.
All right.
So NATO go global.
Perhaps sort of think of the Rasmussen Initiative for the Alliance of Democracies. So it's all good there. So we're ending on a positive note. I'm happy with that. Makes me sleep better at night. I think one thing that we should be doing definitely is keep a close eye on what's going on the 14th of June, what actually comes out of the summit. And then also the nice bridge to promo for the upcoming 2030 series, because on the 15th of June, we'll do a post-summit special where we're going to reflect on what has been discussed at the summit. So we'll definitely touch upon the top of Afghanistan again. Liliana and Zdenek, I want to thank you for your time and your effort, and also early on again for your wonderful contribution to Atlantica. So everyone who's watching this, if you want to know more, read up on what these wonderful PhD candidates have written for us. And of course, I'm very curious to both your theses at the very end. But I think that will take a few more years.
One
more year for you and Zdenek?
1 year and a half.
1.5. Okay, so we'll keep an eye out on that as well. All right, thank you very much again. We're gonna switch this off, and then we're gonna
bye.
Cheers.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Have a nice day all.